These are pieces of my Triumph's frame.
Yes, from the Hypernaked that I found on Facebook Marketplace for cheap. You get what you pay for. But that means that we've got two options here. Option 1, we can get the frame fixed, but it might never be 100%. And option 2, we can replace it with a brand new frame, but that is going to cost a fortune.
Neither sounds like a good option, but the writing was on the wall with the bent forks.
So today we've got some odd jobs to take care of. We've got to decide on a frame solution and start prepping for it.
We can start to sort out the bent Öhlins forks, get all the parts ready for paint, fully assemble the new front wheel,
and go over these parts that I got my parents to smuggle in from the UK. Shh.
Thank you to Insta360 for sponsoring this video. This 2023 Triumph Speed Triple 1200 RS is the newest bike I've ever owned.
I just couldn't afford the brand new $18,000 price tag, so I had to get mine with some pre-installed damage. It's also a British bike, which means that there are a lot more second-hand Speed Triple parts for sale in England than here in South Africa where I live. Now, conveniently, my parents live in the UK, and even more conveniently, they'd planned a trip to come and visit me.
So I hopped on eBay UK to look for Speed Triple parts, got them delivered to my parents' house in the UK, and hatched a plan with my dad.
His luggage was obviously already full of riding gear, so he hid the parts in my mom's luggage and got her to smuggle them into the country for me. It's much cheaper than buying brand new parts from Triumph. So now I've got a rear seat for it, which it was missing, and I've also got a seat cowl for it, which got lost in the crash.
The color doesn't matter at this stage, since we're going to get the whole bike resprayed anyway, thanks to that giant dent in the tank.
I've also now got a set of second-hand brake discs for it, because mine kind of looks more like a taco shell. These even came with all of the bolts and even the ABS ring for it. And finally, I have that missing side panel for the right-hand side. Except if you look closely, you'll notice that this one is actually for the left-hand side. So I now have two left-hand side ones and still none for the right.
Don't always believe eBay listings then, but we're making some headway on parts. However, the most important part we're missing is the frame that we found out is damaged where the bearings sit in the headstock.
Now, I've given the frame a lot of thought. I've weighed up all of my options and I've made a decision. I'll explain it all in a minute, but while my dad was here, I wanted to employ his services to help me strip the forks.
The last time my parents visited, I put my dad to work on my R1 since it's his fault that I love R1s in the first place. So I thought it was fitting to do the same with the Triumph.
The problem with suspension is that every set of forks requires different special tools. The Honda, for example, had Showa forks, so I bought the necessary special tools to disassemble them because I wanted to learn how to work on forks. But then I didn't even end up getting my money's worth because the bend in the fork was so severe that I couldn't actually compress the fork enough to fully disassemble it. And because I didn't know what I was doing, I ended up just taking them to the professionals. And that was $100 worth of tools wasted.
For the Triumph, we first practiced on one fork off camera, and then once we were a little more confident, we attempted the second one. My dad had the idea of using my bicycle work stand to clamp the forks without damaging them, and it worked perfectly. Öhlins also require a special tool to remove the top cap, but I wasn't wasting any more money on a one-time job, so we tried to make our own tool out of flat bar and some bolts. It's crude, but we got it to work, and only then remembered that I should probably release the preload first. With the top cap unscrewed, we could compress the fork, revealing the spring and damper rod. Then, with a bit of teamwork, we managed to get the top cap off completely, remove this rod, loosen off this collar thing, and pull out the spring and other gubbins. With the oil poured out and other important pieces removed, the outer tube just pulled off the stanchion, revealing that the gold chroming only goes as far as it needs to keep up the illusion. Come on, Öhlins, do better. On the other end, the dust seal was easy to remove, but I've never removed a fork seal before in my life, and it felt like I was just going to damage the fork outer. The other issue was that it looks like the damper rod needs a special tool to be removed from the outer tube.
So in the end, I took them to the professionals once again. Suspension really doesn't seem to be my thing, and I never accomplish my goal.
The professionals checked the bend in the fork with a dial gauge, which made it look really dramatic, and in total, it was about 6 mm out.
But they will get them all fixed up, and I'll show you the results when I get them back. While my dad was here, we also managed to take the R1 and the CBR out together. It was actually the first time that I've had them out riding at the same time, which was really cool to see. And I even filmed it, but then I messed it up.
You see, I love my Insta360 Ace Pro 2 action camera for two main purposes. POV shots when it's mounted to the chin of my helmet because it gets a super wide-angle view, and roller shots when it's mounted to the back of a car because the flip-out screen allows me to frame the shot while riding.
But it's missing one feature that I've never missed before. It needs a recently deleted folder like your phone has. Obviously, that's impractical on a camera and a waste of storage, but somehow I managed to delete the footage of riding with my dad.
So despite being able to record at 4K 60 like bikers love, having a built-in wind guard so your bike sounds the best it possibly can, and even having super convenient magnetic mounting,
I still managed to find a feature that it's missing, technically. But if you want incredible footage of your rides, please consider using my links down in the description to order an Ace Pro 2 or any Insta360 camera. You might have noticed that I've fiddled with this area a bit as well.
The airbox is completely out now. That's because I took the bottom triple clamp in with the forks to make sure it's straight, and to get that steering stem fixed that was stripped from the impact and that I had to cut a bit to get it off.
They suggested that I get the top triple clamp checked as well, just in case it is bent. However, that clamp had the whole ignition system on it, and the connector for that system was right underneath the airbox, so I had to remove all of this. And finally, I took the bent front axle in as well because they claim that they can straighten it, but if not, we'll just order a new one. But now that my parents have gone home, I think that I have all the parts to assemble the new front wheel.
The sad part is that I can't use anything from the old wheel. Even the tire has cuts in it.
The strange part is that the tires on the Triumph don't even match. The rear is a Metzeler, which is what they come with from the factory, I believe, and the front is a Pirelli. So I've got a new rim, the bearings are already installed, those second-hand brake discs, ABS ring, replacement bolts, and I even have a matching tire. The only thing that I'm missing is a valve stem.
And yes, even that is destroyed on the old wheel.
This tire is a Metzeler, the same model that's on the rear of the Triumph. It was actually given to me by Noldo from Scala Customs, the guy who painted the swing arm and wheels on my Honda. This tire came off of his KTM Super Duke because he converted that to much wider tires. So this one's only done about 400 kilometers, I think he said. So it's practically brand new and it saves me a bit of money.
Since these bolts have previously been used, I cleaned them up a bit to get the old Loctite off of them. Then, between the markings on the wheel and imprints that the bolts left on the discs, I could deduce which side of the wheel these discs were previously mounted on. And with a dash of Loctite, I bolted everything up quickly and headed off to get the tire fitted and wheel balanced.
And just like that, we've got a front wheel ready to go. Now all we need is a frame. No big deal. But I guess we should talk about the elephant in the room, since I can only procrastinate about it for so long.
So far, I've spent $3,900 on the crash damage speed triple and a further $1,200 on a couple of parts.
So I thought I was doing pretty well budget-wise, since they go for around $12,000 second-hand here where I live. Honestly, I thought I might even be able to make a little bit of money on this project, which would be nice for a change.
However, that all changed in the last video when I discovered the frame damage.
Now, surprisingly, it can be fixed. The shop I took the forks to specialize in frame repair. So I've spoken to the experts and they advocate for fixing the frame. And this is what option 1 would entail. Essentially, there could be two areas of damage. The first one is obviously the missing piece of frame where those little chunks broke off. But the frame could also have been bent from the impact, shortening the wheelbase or tweaking the angle of the neck, or both. For the bearings, they would weld up the missing piece and then grind it out to create a round and flat surface for the bearing. And regarding the frame's bentness, they have a jig that they put the whole bike into, minus the forks, that allows them to heat the frame up so that they can pull it straight and back to its correct wheelbase. So the pro for this option is that it would only cost around $400, which would keep us well within the budget. However, the cons list is a tad longer. For starters, it would take about 6 weeks because they're busy. But most worryingly, when it comes to machining the bearing surface after they've welded up that missing piece on the frame, they would do that by hand with a rotary tool, as opposed to using something like a drill press or a milling machine that would be far more precise in my opinion. Now, I'm sure I'm using the wrong terminology, so I apologize for annoying machinists, but hopefully you get the point. Doing it by hand will never get it perfectly round, flat, and centered. Now, I'm sure machine shops that can do this with proper machinery do exist, but they're hard to find because they don't specialize in motorcycle frames. Whereas the shop that I found do specialize in motorcycle frame repair, but they do this by hand, which I'm not sure I like. As for pulling the frame straight, they claim they get it 99% accurate, but I'm still skeptical. I would also have to get the whole frame repainted because the heat that they use to be able to pull it destroys the paint, or powder coating, I think in this case. Option 2, on the other hand, is straightforward. Buy a new one from Triumph. The pros here are my favorite part. It would be perfect, brand spanking new. Triumph even engrave my existing frame number onto the new frame at their factory, so I wouldn't have to worry about registering the bike with a new VIN. The cons, on the other hand, are obvious. It's expensive. I actually got the price for a new frame on my CBR 1000 before I bought it when I was calculating how much it could potentially cost to fix it. And it was over $6,000. I've also never done a frame swap before. I've never even taken the motor out of a frame. So this would be quite the experience, which I'm not sure if that is a pro or a con. A bit of both, I guess. And finally, this would also take 6 weeks to manufacture.
Out of curiosity, I went off to Triumph Johannesburg once again to inquire about the price of a frame. I admired the yellow RS on the floor again to get some motivation, and I got some pretty good news.
Since Triumph Johannesburg have offered to help me out on this project in any way that they can, I can buy a brand new frame for just $2,400. Now, that is still a lot of money, but it's a fraction of the price of a Honda frame, and considering that I spent almost $2,000 just on a subframe for the Honda, this kind of feels cheap in comparison. So I did it. I ordered it, because at least this way I know that it will be perfect. But that means that the budget has now gone out of the window. But I mean, it's a beautiful bike. It's full of technology. It's only 2 years old. It's only got 5,000 kilometers on it. It deserves to be brought back to life, right?
Now I've got 6 weeks to wait, or to waste, or to prepare. So I started by prepping all the necessary parts for paint. I thought I'd just quickly rip these tail pieces off, but even with all the visible bolts removed, they wouldn't budge. I ended up having to remove the tail tidy, to remove the under tray, just to find the last 4 bolts. But I got them off eventually and made sure to put the bolts back so I don't lose them.
So both of these little panels actually have cracks here where they're attached to the subframe. Because the subframe bent, it put these under pressure and they cracked. But because they're such small cracks and they're going to be hidden under the rider's seat essentially, Noldo says he can fix them. And we're going to get these painted, so hopefully you'll never see it again and there's no point buying brand new ones. Technically, everything needs to come off of this frame to be put onto the new one, but I think it'll be a lot easier to try and move complete sections from one frame to another than every individual part. So I can't do much right now, but I can start with the simple stuff.
The tank was quick and easy since I did that weeks ago. Then I thought there were hidden bolts I was missing to remove its eyebrows, but after unbolting the headlight completely, I worked out that they simply pull off. Much easier. And that was the last few painted pieces removed from the bike. but they still have various other parts attached to them that need to be removed. For example, the seat cowl has a rubber trim on the front and a plastic piece underneath it that just unbolts. I'm also trying this new thing where I don't just rely on my memory for what part belongs where. I'll let you know how it goes. The side panel has a plastic trim that attaches it to the bike. The two belly pan panels are joined together with a plastic trim that didn't fit in my Ziploc bag very well, so I might lose these bolts. And even the eyebrows needed some clips removed. But the biggest part was the tank. It was practically full. I would be really pissed off if I crashed right after filling up. What a waste. I unbolted the fuel pump to drain the fuel that's been sitting in there for the last 10 months, so it looked pretty dirty. There's also a rubber trim piece on the front that needs to go, and a mounting bracket on the rear. So all that was left was the fuel cap that I hadn't given any thought until this moment.
I just worked out that I don't think I can take the fuel cap off at the moment, because just like every fuel cap, you have to have it unlocked in order to remove it. Otherwise you could just undo all the bolts and steal anyone's fuel or fuel cap. But this is a keyless fuel cap, meaning it has to be plugged into the bike with the ignition turned on to open it. And like I said earlier, the top clamp, which has the ignition module on it, is with the professionals getting straightened. So I can't open this at the moment. Sometimes technology really sucks. It's not the end of the world though, because I'm obviously still waiting for one of these on the correct side.
Then I faffed around a bit in the hopes that it will save me some time down the road. I finished removing that tail tidy with under tray and then turned my attention to the rear wheel. I had to buy this massive 55mm 12-point socket, which looks awesome.
Apparently this socket is the same size as some Ducatis use, just like the pin on this paddock stand was the same size as some Ducatis. So I think Triumph stole this hub design from Ducati, because now the latest Panigale has a double-sided swing arm. But nevertheless, now if I buy an older Panigale, I'm salted.
This clip was nice and easy, but I know the torque spec on this nut is about 6 million Newton meters. And I need to be gentle since my bike is in a rather precarious position on these jack stands. So I first tried with my impact gun. Nothing. So I popped it into gear and tried by hand. Then with a pole extension, but it just bent my pole. And then the impact once again, just in case I'd loosened it. Still nothing. I'll try again another day, but this fixes everything, right? Then I was going to remove the rear sets, but that's half done already. So I took off the kickstand with kill switch instead, since I'm hoping that I won't need it anytime soon. And lastly, I thought the whole headlight assembly would be easy. But I ended up having to almost disassemble it entirely just to get to all the connectors for the headlights, dash, and so on. But in the end, I did manage to decapitate the Wasp.
So the most intimidating part about swapping out this frame is honestly the wiring at the moment. Getting all of this wiring routed correctly is going to be a challenge. So I'd love to keep stripping this thing down in preparation, but I think it's smarter to wait until the new frame is here so that all of this is fresh in mind. So let me know if I made the right choice about the frame, and I'll see you on the next ride.